And then there's no money left.
Same day.
Same, well, this W-2, you know this stuff, huh?
Yeah.
So that's a benefit, but it's not an entitlement. An entitlement doesn't have a cap. I'm going to explain it. So an entitlement is like food stamps, welfare, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. So if it's income eligible, so if you, just like we're talking about welfare before, if you have that income, they don't have a choice but to give it to you. They can't say they ran out of money like they do with LIHEAP, with LIP or whatever, because that's capped out. On an entitlement, there's no cap. This is why the Republicans and politicians complain about it all the time. Oh, you're breaking the budget, all these old people, Social Security, we need to go, you know, we raised the Social Security from 65 to 66, now we're going to raise it to 67, whatever. We're going to bankrupt the government because it's an entitlement, and all they do is try to stop entitlements. All we do on our side is try to enlarge entitlements because we have so many people who are eligible who don't get it.
True.
Got 17 minutes of battery.
Hold on.
You're doing a good job. I just don't know if the other battery works, but I'm glad you're on it. We'll see if this, we'll do an hour. We may have to just get another, we're taping some of it because we knew you were missing it, because I don't know why. I don't know why. We're going to test you on it before.
Okay.
What we did in the first 15 minutes is everybody went through the reading and what they pulled out of it, the 3 or 4 things that were most important. So we'll ask you later from your reading what you got out of it.
I didn't get a chance to read it.
And, yeah, all of us read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well. I'm just messing with you. No, nobody read it.
Oh, okay.
We're just taking advantage of you.
Gotcha.
Okay, so why is this important? Because in putting and looking at issues and campaigns, we try organizationally to get entitlements, things that'll be good for everybody.
Yes.
With no cap.
No cap.
Not temporary benefits. And as you start hearing and listening to people, when they say they can't get on welfare, welfare is an entitlement.
Entitlement, yeah.
So the fact that there's now a feeling that you can't apply, it's not worth it, they don't let you in, that's just wrong. That doesn't mean it's an issue, because I don't know if people will move on it, but there is a handle to it, there is a right to it, there is a legal requirements.
So just to make sure, a grievance is singularly. A
A
problem.
grievance tends to be singularly unless you have other people who you can convince that they share that same grievance, and then it goes through the process of becoming an issue.
And the problem is when it's bad necessarily and it's harming people, but it's not being.
It's not an issue.
Yeah, it's not being.
It's
tried.
real.
Yep.
It is a problem. I mean, it's like the windshield survey we talked about. We could make a list that long and still have room on the page to add more things in Amani that we think are issues, just walking out the door, walking around the block a couple of times. But none of that necessarily is an issue. And without going through that process of specific, immediate, and realizable, we might not be able to make any of it campaigns. Follow me? What are some other examples of when y'all are all familiar with the development plan?
The revitalization.
The revitalization. So the revitalization plan looked at several broad issues, right? Does anybody remember any of those issues?
Housing.
Housing, okay.
Safety.
Well, let's just start with one.
All right, housing.
In thinking about housing,
It's also housing and economic development as one area.
okay. I'll just abbreviate. So in either housing or economic development, given the conversation we've been having on issues, does anybody remember, or what would be an example of issues on either one of these sides? Either one of these.
Raggedy houses on the block.
What would you call that? Raggedy houses on the block? Is that called blight?
Blight.
Right.
Foreclosed houses, I don't know.
Okay, so let's just
But
blight.
If you were to go back to what we were talking about, we would talk about the income level versus how much you're spending on rent
But let's just say rent.
in general.
Because we know in Milwaukee, rents have increased over the last several years among the top in the country. So that's a problem, and that seeps into Amani. It may, our rent may be at $650, $700, not $1,250, $1,300 like some of the rest of the median rent in the city, but it affects us because the income is not rising at the same time as rent.
But we do have properties in Amani that are 1,200 as well.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, and those are those landlords that's going off the median income, such as Gorman.
We'll come back to that, because that could be an issue, right?
That sounds like very,
Yeah, so we're
Okay,
working on
so-
it. We're working on it.
Are you saying specific landlords may be?
Mm-hmm.
robbing the people, huh?
What are other issues either that you remember from the revitalization plan or that you think are the case in housing?
Homelessness.
Is homelessness an economic issue or a housing issue? Or is it
I would-
both?
I would-
Kind of like both.
Maybe,
I would say that affordable housing.
I'm just gonna put down affordability.
Because if we was going 30% of people's income,
Ain't nobody there before nothing around here.
no. I mean, if
Now I'm gonna
rents
put
was
homelessness
based
under
off
both-
of
both
everybody's
lines, okay?
30% of their income, you see what I'm saying? So if you only get $100 and 30% of $100,
Yeah, because some of the homelessness is faced from like
30%
a
of
resident
$100
calling the
is
city on their
$100.
landlord because they found out that there's lead throughout the house. Then the landlord kicks them out.
Well, can I put down evictions as another
Yeah.
potential
There we
issue?
go,
Yeah.
evictions, yeah. Sums it up. We got a best selling off there.
Where do repairs fit in? Do repairs fit in blight?
Yeah. Repairs or you would, yeah, this feds be tripping me, I wouldn't do that.
Is, do housing inspectors, do they have sufficient housing inspectors to determine whether or not
There's no sustainability.
Yeah, cause they supposed to, but they
the
ain't.
houses are sustainable
They're
or
not, though.
Yeah.
there's no warrant of habitability, as they call it?
A lot of times there aren't. We have a lot of residents that are dealing with situations where.
Yeah, no accountability from those kind of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's double fold because in the past, we had very active inspectors where they were giving away fines and fees left and right where people were losing their home very quickly. Versus at this point, we don't have any, and they're in between inspectors, and now we see all of these dilapidated properties and people unable to,
So let's just probe that one a little
Yeah.
bit longer. So
Yeah.
did they cut down the number? Is this a government problem? The city reduced the inspection staff, or did they loosen the standards for landlords in terms of habitability, or who did
No.
what to whom? That's what
No,
I'm.
I really just believe it's a qualification in which everybody isn't able to accomplish. So at this point, they're in between inspectors, and they have been. There's been a high turnover in inspectors in Amani in general. Because every time we talk to them, it's like, oh, that person just left, or oh, we don't have anybody right now. Do you have any, suggestions or anything like that? And we have seen the effects of that because now we see all these dilapidated properties and nobody's even getting any fines or fees.
Is that partially because, remember a lot of the old schools, that it's like the downtown is basically turning over. And what I mean by that, all those old schools who had those jobs 30 and 40 years. So is that part of it that now that it's you got a new changing of the guard, and these ones who's coming in, are they being properly trained? You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm kind of looking at, because my brother was working there. You hear what's really kind of going on. And it's like you get the new people in and they're really not caring about those jobs.
Really, there's a skills gap because not everybody is going into that field. You see what I'm saying?
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
not enough people that hold the requirements in order to
Yeah.
fill that position. You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
that's it.
But is it also that landlords
Yeah.
were getting rid of the affordable or cheaper housing rather than pay the fine and fix the apartment?
Could you ask me that again, please?
I'm wondering if the city, what'd you call it, unspoken? I wonder if there's an unspoken rule right now in the city not to inspect as much in Amani, not to fine people because they want there to be cheaper rents in Amani for low-income people. This is what they've decided.
I would-
It's gonna be a low-rent area.
Hey, I would hate to think that way, but that very well could be true because the city properties are even worse than a lot of these landlords. So they could be turning a blind eye to say, hey, you know, we're just not even going to put an inspector over there because our properties are.
I wouldn't
either-
put anything past.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them to answer your question.
To get an example of that, a home that I was applying for, I think like a month ago, I applied for it and to drop the application off the instruction was to drop the application off at the landlord's address. I believe that was the landlord's address. So when I got to the house to drop off the application to the landlord, not the house that I was getting, that I wanted, but the landlord, it was like 30 times better than the house. And it was like literally maybe 10 or 15 minutes away from that house. So it was in the same neighborhood, but it was like, I don't know, like it was like it made me feel some type of way. When I dropped it off, I'm like, okay, so you have that property which you want people to live in, but then you got yours that's looking like gold, like, you know? So I was like, okay, it's kind of an eye-opener for me a little bit, with how landlords kind of live, like based on how they live and how their tenants live.
Yeah, my landlord live in Racine.
So it's like, that's kind of,
He's living right there.
He
In
lives in
Racine.
Racine.
Oh, Racine.
And he leaves by 4 o'clock every day.
Okay, so landlords are an issue, but inspections may be an issue too. I mean,
yeah, like you don't even go inspect the house, like you don't even, do you know that your house, that house look like that compared, like, and I don't know,
maybe as
maybe
long
it's
as
like.
you're paying your
yeah,
rent, he doesn't
like,
care.
Right, like it's like, I don't care, cause I don't know.
As long as they know, and the landlord ain't gonna say nothing if you ain't saying nothing.
Yeah, like if you don't say nothing, I feel like they're like, oh, well, she think that's so, you know, she
See,
okay
a
with
lot of
that.
landlords take advantage of a lot of people who's in those type of situations where they struggling, that, you know, can only give them so much money here and there. So they like, okay, well, I'm working with you, so they expecting you not to have any complaints or whatnot. And then the tenant don't want to complain because they working with them and they scared if they complain, they're gonna get evicted, so.
So have any of y'all heard about this study that was a book called Evictions that
Yeah.
focused on right here in Milwaukee?
Yes. I got it up in my office.
The two of y'all,
As do I.
huh?
I have it in my office too.
Yeah, I got it in my office.
Okay, so would you share with our leaders some of what the book argued about this very topic?
So the author basically talks about how there's like unsuitable living conditions in Milwaukee for people, like across the board. They break down like certain kinds of data, all of which I don't know offhand. I actually have known about the book for a few years now. I haven't actually read it though, but I've heard about like some of the weird demographics in Milwaukee. About, you know, Wade talked about how the rent is constantly raising year by year, but wages have remained stagnant at the same time.
Yeah.
So
So I
Alex,
actually,
have you read the book?
yes, I actually read it from cover to cover. I really believe it gives a bird's eye view of the landscape of Milwaukee. And I meet people from around the country who think they know Milwaukee just by reading the
Yeah.
book. But being a kid who actually grew up here, not only survived, but was able to thrive and see both ends of the spectrum, where it takes you through day-to-day stories of, you know, glimpses of my life, being evicted on one end and also having to do evictions.
And so part of what he goes into is exactly, I think what you were saying, one of the two of you now, now I lost my train. But it goes to the fact that people are so desperate for housing.
Yeah, they become
At a
victims.
price, they don't even raise with the landlord how shitty it is. So they know toilets leaking, the heater doesn't work, sometimes not at all, there's no hot water, whatever, but they don't want to be homeless. They don't want to be evicted because that costs more money, they have to move or whatever.
And it takes you have to, with an eviction, it has to be at least 2 years off your record.
Yep.
In order for somebody to want to rent to you again.
So it's hard to find a decent place to stay after eviction.
Let
So
alone
when you
purchase a
stop, when
home.
you're not able to pay the rent and the
Let alone
landlord won't
purchase a
fix
home.
it, it's easier for you just to leave, no matter how bad that landlord was, than end up fighting and maybe getting evicted and then getting in this trick bag for a couple of years. So the book is really, some of it's not accurate probably, but it's in terms of being an organization here in Milwaukee, you're gonna have to come to grips with this book because it gives a lot of issues and handles that we might want to address.
Yes.
You know, one of the things I'm gonna do while we're here is I have a list of some foreclosures here in Milwaukee, and we're gonna look and see how many of them are here in Amani. Okay, I'm gonna show you where we're going on this, but first let's look at some of the issues around economic development. This is, you know, okay? So we've already talked about one, which is wages, right? Went through the minimum wage, we went through what McDonald's is paying now, we went through what Walmart's paying. Even if they raise the money over $7.25, what's the issue then?
Inflation?
Huh?
Inflation?
No,
Financial literacy.
no.
They
We
raise-
did the figures to come up with that $10,000 based on 2080. What did 2080 represent?
Hours.
Full time.
Full-time work.
Right.
Who wants to tell me that you can be guaranteed full-time work at McDonald's or Walmart?
Yeah, they cutting
Because
back.
if you tell me that, you're lying.
They
No,
put
I actually
you on
was a
part
manager at
time.
Walmart, and we would tell them, like, if you put on your application you want to be full-time, we would say, yeah, we're gonna make you full-time after we see your experience. That would never happen though. Just to be real honest with you, and that I was literally a manager, and I would literally be like, okay, I'm gonna hire you right now or whatever. We don't have full-time hours available, but we will soon. That soon never comes.
Yeah.
Because
And
in
that's a
Walmart, the
strategy.
schedules are all done not by the local manager, but by computers in Bentonville.
By computer, and then
They
it's like,
say that's not
Yeah.
true, that's absolutely true.
Yeah,
Anybody,
it is.
you know, I
So
organized a project for 5 years to organize
Yes.
Walmart
Yes, it
workers.
is.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's
And
whole
then
documentaries on
They'll
this.
do this, right? So around the holiday time, we'll give you 40
right.
hours, right?
That's right.
We'll give you 40 hours, you know, probably November. I mean, you will be lucky if you get October. So we'll say October, November, December. Once January 1st hit, you back to your 20, 25 maybe.
Oh, and I've watched people from week to week go from 32 hours down to 16, up to 24, back down to 8. Oh, wow.
So they don't have to give you benefits.
Oh, wow, no.
Or they hire so many people to the point where they can't give nobody full time except the supervisors, the managers,
That-
on up. So anybody that's
That's brilliant.
not a supervisor on down, you only gonna
They
get.
masturbate.
So they have to
brilliant.
give a supervisor or a manager that 40 hours point blank period.
That's
But the
brilliant.
other people, the associates, no.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Another issue, in addition to full-time and part-time work, is job security.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people have no guarantee to stay on the floor. You know, you have no guarantee that, you know, you can come back to work tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a right to work state, you know, you looked at me wrong and they can fire you like that.
We're at will employer. They can
Yeah.
fire you.
Well, even in a non-right to work,
They can do
you know,
it.
depending on what the probationary period is. I mean, when did you work for Walmart?
This was only a couple of years ago, not even 5, like maybe 3. I've been gone, maybe 3 or
Okay,
something.
so it was after
My
they
son
got
was-
rid of right to work here.
Yeah,
But
my
even-
son gonna be 2 when I was pregnant when I was working there.
Mm.
Yeah, so that was maybe 2 years.
But here's my point. even in a union state, not a right-to-work state like
Mhm.
Louisiana or Arkansas, or places where I live, probationary periods for Walmart were often